The Machine is finally bringing you coverage on our first local War Machine tournament, sporting 6 players, 3 of them playing card war. I won't give you a detailed rundown of every game, but still, I'll show you all the pictures I took. I also decided to make this another double feature, telling you a little more about the other tourney I've been to in September last year. Enjoy! So first up is the Brutal Annihilation Days Invitational, held back in July last year. It sounds really sophisticated said this way, so let me let you in on the truth. Our local community thought, hey, we have a decent number of War Machine Hordes players, let's have a tournament restricted to people part of this community. Because opening it up would probably invite outsiders with too much of a cutthroat attitude. That's why it's invitational. The title Brutal Annihilation Days was merely agreed on because it could be abbreviated to as B.A.D. and the corresponding award for superior strategists to badass. In the end, out of 14 people invited, 6 came. The split was Trolls once, Mercs once, Scorn once and Cardor thrice. Yeah, we still had a blast. First round, the scenario was Mosh Pit and I was pitted against Luke the Troll player, one of the players that taught me the game and one of the better ones. While the pictures slide by, I'll briefly introduce my Zerkova list I played here. Zerkova, Beast, Kodiak, Great Bears, Min Mechanics, Grilleturnian, Wardog. He had Grimangus, Bomber, Impaler, Bouncer, Digmies, Min Tuffalos. As the game proceeded, he got very close to taking Zerkova out, but he didn't because of the Wardog, and then I circumvented the bump animus intuitively by having the Great Bears take out the Bomber, so that the one eventually surviving was behind Beast when he got bumped back. The second attack then crit, froze Grim, and afterwards he was ended. So I go into round 2 with a win. Next scenario is Break the Line. My opponent, not having played War Machine since Superiority, is the one actually winning the B.A.D, but I'm getting ahead of myself. He fielded Epic Sorcerer, a Berserker, a Kodiak, a full unit of Democore, a full unit of Winterguard with UA, a unit of Widowmakers and a Manhunter. I fielded Commandant Irusk with a Marauder and a Kodiak, as well as my Min Einfing Pikeman with unit attachment, Kayazi Eliminators, Manowar Dracoon and the Wardog. There was one misplay by me and one bad roll, the misplay being misgauging the Eliminators' charge distance. To my defense, I was still practicing with them, but they sadly fell short of Sorcerer. The bad roll was 4 Ironfang Pikemen doing a combined melee attack on Epic Sorcerer and missing. His following turn, Irusk was brought down low. Alright, round 3 and I'm on an even score. I have to go up against my brother's mercenary ally list. I brought out Irusk again and he fielded a frickin' signalist in disguise. Constance Blaze, Gallant, Gun Mages with Dude, Max Precursors with UA, Harlem Verge and the Piper. The only thing more blatant would be to use Victor Pendrake in place of the Piper. Then again, I should admit that this list was created in protest of a rule for the tournament which said no mercs in faction armies, which persisted to please a few number of participants which didn't even show up. Anyway, scenario for this final round is Throwdown. I tried to deter the Precursors with the Eliminators, sent the Marauder and Dracoon to deal with the right zone and then swerved to seize the left, but for some reason I have to commit Irusk as well and my die rolls went south, so in the end the flanking Constance takes out a fully camped Irusk with dog backup. I think it also had to do with events going on against me on the right. Oh, and here's a picture of Brick vs Brick in Throwdown, which was a boring game. Come over here and fight like a man! Make me! In the end, I turned out 4th and was slightly disheartened about my tourney performance, especially with me having turned into a serious douchebag from frustration during round 3. I did not want to perform like that in the tournament in Koblenz, which I already enrolled in. At least there was some time in between to cool down and gear up again. In the meantime, Candlejack, the guy I played in round 2, walked away with the overall win, which just shows that you should always be suspicious of people questioning their abilities after having taken a long break. Roughly 2 months, a number of practice games, severe theory machine and list building later, I headed to Koblenz for a tournament called the Foundry. Since they had a press ganger, it was going to be a sanctioned event. At first I was unsure of my participation, but when I heard of their dropout ratio, I felt obliged to attend. Turned out to be a good decision. I'll have to report this tourney differently though, since I did not take any pictures at all. So I'll be even less detailed on my games, but I can at least give you some more insight on those of the others. The scenarios were, in order, overrun, destruction, killbox. Caster kill as a wing position was voided except for the killbox scenario. In the first round I was paired against Protectorate. He had Resnick and Prime Severus as his casters, and the rest of the list was next to the same. It was therefore mostly a choice between Plague and Ebola. I do however not know what exactly made me choose Zerkova for this first match, with the override scenario to boot, but there I went. I had a hunting moves list tier 4, and his army, of which we have a slide here, was 2 Reckoners, an Avatar, Vassal, Choir, Exemplars Errant. In hindsight, I would have probably fared way better with Vladimir Experient, but as it stood, I was taking a spell-slinging caster against a spell-warded army, and in a rush to the center mission beatdown, I brought power 12s and some jacks. It was an uphill battle from the get-go. But as we advanced on each other, I, through, let me say it this way, clever targeting, managed to circumvent Spellward most of the time. And, what's not shown on the pictures, there was a huge pile of Jack Rex in the center zone, where the Avatar, the Spriggan and 1 Reckoner led as a mass of mangled metal. In the end I did lose, but not to the opponent's army, but the clock. It was a good game and we were very even on victory points. It was 32 to 30 for him, and even though I suspect his Gale Force 9 dice of rolling too good while I whiffed a series of important rolls. The other games were Cardo vs Seaforge, where Cardo won, even though the Seaforge's player's inexperience with Mark II really tilted the favors against him, and Mad Hammer lost pretty badly to Prime Vlad. The last game was Scorn vs Marth, where Krios Pop and Drop went up against the Moloch Yo-Yo and got downright tabled, but as you can see, both of them. Next round I was paired against the Seaforge player, in the back. There was a Cardog Scorn matchup up front, and Protectorate on Protectorate action in the middle. This happened after our obligatory lunch break. The scenario was destruction and I already knew I picked Vladimir Experienced. He actually only had the choice of Gorton Grandback or Durgeon Madhammer and went with Madhammer. The rest of the list was the same. Admittedly, I was kinda scared. Long years of playing Magic taught me that people who pretend to be bad only try to catch you off guard. And once again, go first. And my plan is to have the Manhunters take out one of the objectives and the Dracoon the other, if the opportunity would present itself. The game took interesting turns. After a gunner shoots the Dracoon from the horse, I decide to do something I haven't done before with Vladimir Experienced. I feed top of turn 2, and I'm not doing the assassination. I get to pump 2 Kayazi, the Manhunters and the Dracoon into Oversoul. I then run the Kayazi to engage the Mortar crew. The Manhunter trio takes on the Avalancher and Tor, and they destroy the first objective for good measure. The Dracoon Hail Marys into the Driller. And the turn after that, when Mad Hammer came up, Vlad decides to take his chances and charges. And I bring him down with 2 swings, the second rolling 6-6-5 on the damage, and that seals the game. It did take longer than usual because I was part opponent and part rules mentor, because he was very inexperienced and I thought I just can't leave him this way. In the Clash of the Faithful, the purple Menites fared better than their green counterparts, and so Severus wins over Führer Experienced. It needs to be repeated, those Menite armies were really similar in comparison. I felt like fielding a ragtag force of bandits against such tunishness, and got even a little proud at having put up such a good fight in round 1. In the last game, the Butcher went up against Makeda and found himself on the very receiving end of Molly Khan. In round 3, I get to play against the Cardog player, and we end up with a match of the Dark Prince versus the Dark Champion. Seafort is pitted against Protectorate, and Scorn meet the victorious Protectorate faction. I happen to be astonished at the fully painted Max Democore on his side. Well, basically, my first thought thought was, oh, 3 victory points. So I placed Yuri to deal with them, the other manhunters and the Dracoon take the other flank. The one thing unfun was the number of artillery I faced. 2 mortars and the behemoth. I played as usual, but I lose heavily in the process. Note to self, Arthur striking Drago under Prime Vladimir and Science Importance is outstanding. He nearly ate the Juggernaut for breakfast. Yuri kills 2 Demo Corps and wounds another 2 with a single Thresher. The Behemoth gets stuck in Kayazi Assassins and only kills a couple. The Widowmakers shoot down the Manhunters, but the end comes when a well-deviated mortar shot kills 2 Widowmakers, Madeline and my War Dog. Only a select few have withstood the retaliation that followed the turn after they killed my dog. Nobody messes with my dog. And then he happens to cast Science Importance again, and he did not move Vlad from his position. So I just trample my Marauder up, charge him in the back with Vladimir Experienced, feed, send the Dracoon and 3 Kayazi into Oversoul, and have Transference running. Turns out that 3 Kayazi who walk up to Vlad need not even boost to take him out. Sealforge loses to Krios Pop and Drop in round 2. The Scorn Menite matchup was very tense, Morgul vs Severius. The very first big event of that match was when a fully buffed Titan Bronzeback crashed into 2 Reckoners and ate them both. We thought that the match was decided right there and then, but Severius was able to make his comeback and Morgul finds out that defense 17 is not that great if you can't get away from the avatar of Marth. And so the Foundry ends. And after calculating victory points, I actually come out ahead of the second Protectorate player and score 3rd place. It was a fun and well-run little tourney, so thanks again to Sidster, the press ganger that got this event going, and to the players at CTU Koblenz, which were a joy to play against and provided a real challenge for me. Even though I lost it, the first game was actually the most fun for me. I mean, I took Zerkova with a Theme Force into an uphill battle and, with a little more time, could have actually emerged victoriously. At least I say so myself. Who would have guessed? I'm definitely bringing that tier to more tourneys. And the 3 things I learned from the Foundry. A. 2+ inches deployment zone with the Hunting Wolves tier is a real boon. It enabled me to get a lot out of my feet when I was actually on the back burner for having to start first. B. I have to relearn to use Madeline Corbeau since she works very differently if I go first. If I go second, it's mostly that on my turn 2, the enemy is already in range and I can use Intrigue, but if I go first, it's probably not the case. And lastly, Kayazi with Vladimir Experienced are awesome. I did not experience that yet so much, preferring the Manhunters as targets, but oh boy. And that is all for this double feature. Took me long enough to get it done. And as for the next issues, I'll be going back to doing more battle reports. I actually got a whole slew of those waiting to be done. So until then, farewell.